So folks should see that notification. And I'm going to do just a couple of minutes about the K-16 network, PHEND, why we're here. So again, I'm Janine Wright. I'm the K-16 Partnerships Manager at PHEND. Hillary Kane, our director, is also here, as is Eden Kiner, another colleague from PHEND. For those of you who are not as familiar, PHEND stands for the Philadelphia Higher Education Network for Neighborhood Development. We're a network of more than 25 colleges and universities with an emphasis on civic engagement and community partnerships. And many of you are probably familiar, most familiar with our AmeriCorps and Vista work. The K-16 partnerships work, specifically, the goal of that work is to engage in issues around school and university partnerships. And we do that in a number of ways. So we serve as a network hub and information clearinghouse for our university partners. We provide training and technical support around key issues. We provide financial support and information about financial support to our partners. We also try to act as a matchmaker for our stakeholders. So if we know that one university or college is working on something and another one is interested in that, we try to put those folks together to sort of leverage that impact and so that they can learn from one another. We also produce monthly newsletters, a K-16 newsletter and a college success newsletter. We do host the Lindy Awards every year for excellence in school and community partnerships. And we do what you're doing now, which is that we host the College Success Network webinars, in which we try to put information in front of folks that we think will be of interest and of use to our network partners. And so today's webinar, we're particularly excited about. It will feature folks from Bryn Mawr University. CARLA is the name of the organization, and I keep getting it wrong. I keep saying coalition when it should be campaign, or it's campaign when it should be coalition, but it's the anti-racist literacy at Bryn Mawr. And so I'm going to let Dr. Chanel Wilson and her colleagues correct me and fix everything I just said so that we make sure we get the right information out. So Chanel, I'll turn it over to you.
Great, thanks. You are doing amazing. And I am going to talk you through the sharing of my screen as is customary on Zoom. Okay, here we go. Okay, so good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for being here. We are from Bryn Mawr College and just very excited to share our process with you. So we started off as a campaign for campaign for anti-racist literacy, Janine, and we just went through a recent rebranding last year to coalition now, and we'll talk some more about why we made that change throughout our presentation. So we are going to share a bit about our origin story and some of the processes that we have created together to create and sustain CARLA, and then also offer some concrete recommendations for people as they're moving forward. So and then we'll take turns kind of going in and out of information. So different folks on the team will be talking, and these are just a sample of us, people who are available today, but we have a larger group membership. So my name is Chanel Wilson. I teach in the education program at Bryn Mawr and Haverford College's education program. And I also direct Africana Studies. And I was one of the founding conveners of CARLA way back a few years ago. And so y'all, I was thinking we could go in this order for just brief introductions, and then we can keep going.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name's Ananya. I'm a junior at Bryn Mawr College, so I'm a student, and I am the student assistant for CARLA. So I work on all different kinds of projects with them and stuff like that. So I'm kind of like, I do everything.
Yes, all the things.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Joy. I use she, her. I'm the assistant dean for intercultural engagement at Bryn Mawr College, and I've been on CARLA for, I think, a little over a year now.
Hi, my name is Diane Gentry, and I am in the Alumni Relations and Development Office at Bryn Mawr College. So all of my colleagues are inward facing, and I'm more outward alumni facing. And I joined CARLA last year, so I'm the newest I think, member. Oh, and it's my pleasure to do the first slide. So shall I tell you a little about Bryn Mawr College? I'm going to share the mission statement just as we're sharing all these numbers. But at the core, Bryn Mawr College is a residential women's college that is at the undergraduate level. We are a women's college, and we have a co-educational graduate program that's quite small in arts and sciences, social work, and we have a very few post-baccalaureate students as well. Primarily, we serve the undergraduate population. That's really the focus of our mission. And I think rather than going through these numbers, you can see a focus, 75% of our faculty are white, 65% of the staff are white. But if you look at our undergraduate population, it's 37% of the student body is white, 32% are students of color, and then 21% are international students with like a 7% plus or minus unknown. We revamped our mission statement at Bryn Mawr College, I think in 2019. And at that time, equity and inclusion serving as an engine for excellence was added to explicitly to our statement. And also a commitment statement was instituted that we share like at presentations or when we're doing things kind of off campus. So the outward facing commitment statement is the college is committed to increasing the diversity of its students, faculty, staff, and curricular offerings with a particular focus on enhancing ethnic and racial diversity and advancing social justice and inclusion. We believe diversity strengthens our community and enriches the education of our students. And so I think someone else will take it away, but that's a great core statement. And, you know, how do you really create that community?
Right, and so that's where we come in, and trying to push the community forward in tangible ways, because I think that language, even though language wasn't easy, language comes easier, and then actions sometimes are held off for a while. So I'm going to share a bit about how we started, and as we go through. I'm a hoarder, so you'll see pictures of some original artifacts from CARLA's different meetings, and there's information there, but it's not necessarily information that that you need to take notes on or anything like that. So you'll see that there are lots of images and they're just there for aesthetic purposes. But we started in the spring of 2018. Bryn Mawr is a part of the PHENND. Well, Bryn Mawr is one of the campuses that the PHENND National Foundation helps to match students with. And so we have a cohort that comes from Boston, and we also have a cohort that comes from Houston. The Boston cohort has been around for over 20 years, and I'm pretty sure Houston is at, well, I guess this would be their 8th year, this student's incoming. And so what PHENND does is it matches students with institutions that they otherwise might not have explored as options for educational opportunity. It provides a leadership merit-based scholarship for students, and also provides different opportunities and support systems to help students move through a full 4-year or sometimes more years degree, along with other opportunities beyond. And so what's unique about PHENND is they send groups of students to campus, usually 10. At Bryn Mawr, of course, they're women, but in other colleges, co-ed groups. And the goal is that this PHENND supports each other to continue through and to graduate. And so every year they also have a PHENND Plus retreat where PHENND students or scholars are invited to invite other campus members to a retreat that's usually held in Malvern. And the goal of that is to think about different different social topics. Often they're about race or harder things and harder conversations. And the goal at the end of that conference is for a retreat, is for people to come together and develop actionable steps to move forward. So one of the groups that year, the first year was about race. The summit was on race. And so of course we needed to have an anti-racist group, I thought. And so so that's the one that that we came together with, and we decided to call ourselves like the Anti-Racist Literacy Framework Group. And our mission is to create and sustain a shared, accountable, conceptual framework and toolkit for anti-racist literacy in classrooms and the community of the college. And so when we first came together, we really saw anti-racist literacy as a as a major need on campus. The conversation about DEI was beginning to grow, and it was something that people knew about, but it wasn't necessarily something that people were operating within. But also anti-racism is very different from traditional DEI work, and we saw that there was no attention or focus to that. And so we originally conceptualized anti-racist literacy as knowledge and skills that allow people to interpret the dynamics of race and racism at work in a situation and participate in order to challenge and change them. And so we started with 16 members at that original grouping at the Posse Plus retreat, and now we have over 93 members in 2021, consistently a mix of students, staff, and faculty. And we have a very fluid membership, which we'll talk about a bit later. But we started out as the Anti-Racist Literacy Framework Group. And then when we came back to campus, we're like, oh, we need to make it sound better. So we came up with the campaign for anti-racist literacy at Bryn Mawr. And we didn't have in mind what would come out of our work initially, but we wanted anti-racism to be central in the conversation at the college. And so last year, when we reached year 3, we realized that we're no longer a campaign, because when I think about campaigns start and then they end, and then something new emerges. And so we changed the name to Coalition, because we hope to be around for a bit, but also there's always something for us to do. And we come together to make that happen. So that's how we started.
Yeah, so for our, like, the way we are structured and the values, Chanel already went over some of it, but the biggest part I think about CARLA is that it's intergenerational, cross-positional, and cross-relational. So it's faculty, staff, and students, which you can see in the fact that, like, you have faculty, staff, and student presenting today. So that's a really important part, because as we'll talk about like later in the group, a lot of the things that CARLA does is based on like information sharing and connecting parts of campus that are usually very disconnected. Like faculty and staff and students usually only interact in like certain ways. And so it's not as like combined, whereas anti-racism work on campus has to be like a coalition, I guess. Another really important part of CARLA is that there's no necessarily like hierarchy of like who does what. It's very much like an opt-in. Like if we come together as a group and discuss certain projects, and if anyone wants to work on that, we kind of try to like divvy up who is doing what, but there's no like president per se who like kind of delegates and stuff like that. For all of these that we have, like affirming equal value, positive community of respect. Those are all really important, because CARLA is a place where people can come together and ask questions about certain things that are happening either in their departments or the work that they're doing, or if people have certain, I don't want to say complaints, but if people have certain issues that they're talking about and want help on, it's also a place for that. I think one of the important parts is that we aren't the college admin. Like, we're not a speaking tool for admin, nor do we decide what happens at the administrative level. And so we're acting completely separate. So we're not necessarily like, we don't have to follow what like President Kim Cassidy says that we need to do. We can do our own thing. And a lot of times we respond critically to like DEI reports, and we'll talk about that in like what we do. But that's also important in having our own autonomy and being separate from the college. And also
Figure out how to go back. Oh, I got it now.
Yeah. And in bringing people together, one thing that I've done, especially as a student, is reached out to like faculty and staff that I think would be an asset to the group, and kind of like let them know. And so it's also a little harder to say no to someone coming and being like, you should come to this group. So for like how we bring people into the fold with like very targeted invitations and like asking specific people if they want to be part. And so this is the part where I was talking about like specific things that we've done. As I said earlier, we've reflected and responded to the diversity and inclusion reports, which are official reports put out by the college in terms of like what the goals for DEI are, or like what they've done in the past. And so a lot of times we'll get together as a group and kind of like critically analyze what is happening with the reports, because a lot of times the admin will try to like push things, or like we'll try to like forget about certain things. And so our role is partly to be like kind of like a stopping point and being like, well, hey, you talked about this, like where is it in this? Our second, one of our other most important things, which came out of like the Posse Plus retreat, was the anti-racist framework. And this is a running draft, so it's not necessarily like set in stone, but it was a framework for different departments and different like places on campus if they want to start adopting it. It wasn't like an official thing put out by the college saying that every department needs to do this, because as before we said that we're not necessarily like a tool for admin, but that framework was like important for different departments and stuff that they want to put to be part of this like anti-racist education as we go forward. We also, Bryn Mawr and Haverford College had a student-led strike last year in fall. So students went on strike from classes and school activities for 2 weeks. I think it was 16 days. School activities, work, and classes. And so it basically brought the entire college to a halt to demand better resources, better treatment of Black and Brown students. And there is, if people are interested, there is like the demands that were put out by the students, and the work is still ongoing, but that was a really big thing that happened at Bryn Mawr and Haverford colleges. And during this time, CARLA collected statements of solidarity from different departments. One thing that's really important is that a lot of times when there's student-led action on campus, the institutional memory of it is really short, because once the students that were a part of it graduate, it kind of just like fades into the abyss, like not many people know about it. And so an important part, especially for us, was to collect like the timeline of what was happening and collect statements of support from different departments and different people, so that it could be placed in a place that people could see it for generations to come.
So we wanted to highlight some powerful moments that we have had as a coalition. When we were talking about, when we were creating this, we were talking about them as like bright stars in our memory of what we've done with the group. So the first one is definitely the anti-racist literacy framework process. Having so many people work together collaboratively on this document that was pretty extensive, and to have that many perspectives included and respected, that process is, I can speak for myself, not something I'd ever been a part of. And I think it was really amazing just to go through that, and then to put it out and offer it to the school was really amazing. The second one that we thought was, oh yeah, that was really powerful, because it showed how the students trusted this group, CARLA. So during the strike, certain CARLA faculty and staff members were asked to provide support to the collective. So they were dealing with over 500 emails and documents, and they were writing really long demands and answering questions and leading office hours. They were doing a lot. And so they asked for a little bit of support, and we were able to provide that while respecting their anonymity and keeping that all together. So that was really wonderful that they trusted us to do that. Another example, oh, did you want to say something, Chanel?
You want me to do this one?
Go ahead, yeah.
So this one was a situation that I had experienced in a faculty meeting. This is the beginning of my 5th year at Bryn Mawr. Before I was on a visiting assistantship, and then now I'm on the tenure track. So last year was my first year on the tenure track. So it was the first time I had to go to faculty meetings on a consistent basis. And so CARLA had done the process of the anti-racist literacy framework. It was something that was campus wide and people had the opportunity to participate in, but also CARLA as a existence as an entity was becoming more well known. Some people knew what CARLA was, others knew the word CARLA but didn't know what it meant. And so our membership definitely increased last year. And then because of the strike, there was increased attention to CARLA as well. And in one faculty meeting, I was discussing CARLA and talking about the ways that we communicated with the president's office, or different ways that we speak back to administration or speak back to the college. And another faculty member who had been there, maybe I guess she's been there about 10 years, she questioned why CARLA thought that they could do that and why CARLA existed and why we thought we could just communicate with administration in the ways that we were. And it was interesting to me because, you know, we're all adults and so we can speak to whoever we like, but the aversion to a grassroots collective group having that level of voice was something that wasn't respected by all members of the faculty.
Right. So it really showed how loud our voice was, that people were starting to notice and starting to speak out against it. Yes, protecting the hierarchy, yes, in the chat. And the last bright star that really warms my heart to think about is the speed with which CARLA was able to collect itself and act in the face of the strike. A lot of different departments and offices really struggled to process what was going on, to think about the demands, and then to respond in a way appropriate for their department or office. But CARLA was right on the ball pretty quickly, and we were able to come together as a coalition to respond to the strike and also provide resources to help those offices and departments understand why the students were on strike and how they could be supportive. So as we're inviting in more and more members, like Ananya was saying, inviting in different faculty members, staff members, students, one way that we maintain membership and maintain focus on our values are to consider these questions. Why are you in this group? And talking about our different connections to the issues. We all come from different perspectives. We're all in different offices. Some of our offices are very isolated. Bryn Mawr can be a very siloed place sometimes. So it's really important that we share, but also hear why other people are passionate about this and why and how it affects their work specifically. We like to think about our vision for the future and keep our eye on what's coming next and our hopes and dreams, and not be bogged down with pessimism. You hear like, oh, like, how are we supposed to get rid of racism? How are we supposed to change this? That's not an attitude that we find conducive to action. So we're always looking to the future. We want to engage practically with the issue. We talked about the anti-framework that we wrote and how that was a practical step that we could take to help us. Like, that was a lot of education and writing that we had to do in order to create that, but then help the rest of the community in their learning and growing process. So we don't want to just be like a think tank or like a reflection group that is just discussion. We want to put out work that will improve the community on a whole. We also want to critically question the decisions that we make as a group and make sure that we're holding true to our rejection of hierarchies, holding true to the grassroots, the way we started this group. Not sure what we meant by idea. Chanel, do you know?
Yeah, we're always welcoming of ideas from our different positions and based on current context, and recognizing that that our ideas should be welcome and will drive our action. And then of course our personal commitments to those things, and what we can, when we leave our space, what can we individually do to like support and uphold our group vision.
Yes, thanks.
So, I put a note in the chat if people wanted to screenshot that slide. The next 3 slides are really just questions or information that people don't have to answer, but you can screenshot and take back to your own groups or for your own files as you begin to think about how you might create some organizing on your own campus that will move you all forward. So these are some questions for consideration, and they come from this text, Unapologetic. I don't know if you can actually see because I can't see anything, but a Black, Queer, and Feminist Mandate for Radical Movements by Charlene Carruthers. And I didn't have this text when we first started CARLA, but I came across it in 2020. And so within that text, she comes from a community organizing activism framework, and then offers these questions, but also these commitments. So you can pick up that text. And also you can screenshot these and use that in your work. These are questions from, these questions are from our original Posse Plus retreat in 2018. Spring of 2018. And so again, you can screenshot these, and these are just things to help the group begin to move from ideation to action planning, and consider all of the different types of elements that you should consider when you are beginning to organize. And here's another one. This came from 2019. It's a little bit, I had to blow this one up, but I think that the words are still visible here. So another list of questions really that can help you to be more specific, but also to move forward. And of course, this was directed at Bryn Mawr. So some suggestions and recommendations that we have for you all, in addition to the questions that we just shared, are to lead with love. One of the things that one of the elements of life that is important for me is operating from a stance of love, operating from a stance of grace, humility, and recognizing that if this is how and why we're leading with love and recognizing people's humanity, that then we'll always make better progress and we'll be able to do something together. We also have a co-convener leadership model. And so I was the original convener, and now we have 2 new co-conveners this year, Joy being one of them, the other Amy. And so leading from a place where of shared leadership, but also not thinking about, I think like Ananya said, we don't have a president, or we don't have those types of roles. We have people who work together to bring us together, and then we as a group decide where we're going, what is our vision, and how are we going to get there. And so as you're thinking about beginning and or scaling for sustainability, a co-convener model has worked for us because we're always in conversation and we have different people to be in conversation so that there is some sustainability. Of course, our students are, and sometimes and staff members are people who cycle through. Our students, of course, some have come in and they've graduated and others are brand new. And so with that type of fluidity, there does need to be some core anchoring of how we can lead for sustainability, and then embracing fluidity. So though we have 93 members at this point, or 95 actually, we had 2 new recruits. there's no way that we'll all be available all at the same time to meet. And so we have some people who are able to make 2 or 3 meetings, and then some who aren't able to make any meetings at all. But we do document the experience. So you see, I have the pictures here of different things that we have done over the years, but we also take really good notes during the meetings, and then we make those available in a group. So you could have a Google Drive where you keep notes, or we have an Outlook group where we have notes and files and different information that people can access if they're not able to make a meeting, or if they do, but they just want to remember later on. Transparency and visibility is really something that is important. So CARLA has always been transparent, but not everyone pays attention to anti-racism. So some people didn't know who we were until last year when the strike began, and they thought that we weren't being transparent or visible, but it was because they were looking over us and not looking for us. But transparency and visibility is absolutely important in all of the work that we do, especially because we want to recruit more people into the movement, but also the more transparent and visible we are, then we are resisting structures of invisibility, isolation, and hierarchy that makes it so that people only have access to certain types of information, which is why us being cross-positional and cross-generational is absolutely necessary for how we move forward. And I just want you to remind you that there will be challenges, there will be backlash, but do it anyway because it matters.
For some of the suggestions for starting a group like this on your own campus, this one seems kind of obvious, but there's no one size fits all. Customize it to your campus community and the issues that are present on your campus. Stuff that Bryn Mawr needed to work on might not be the same things that other universities need to. So be mindful of what is present on your campus. Like, start asking questions to like students, staff, and faculty about what they see as some of the issues that are present on campus. Also important is having a balance between being proactive and reactive. We really saw this the past year with we started doing our framework, which was the proactive action. That kind of was something that we started and we're working on. However, when the strike happened, our support and the website that came after that, and the sense of solidarity that we had with the strike, was reactive to different student issues that were happening on campus. And so just being able to balance that and being able to pivot from doing something that you've been working on to also providing support to different movements and actions that are happening on campus. And also for needing support, that's going to be different. I'm the support in the sense that they were able to get funding to have a student assistant. So I get paid, which is very nice. So you might need a student assistant and you might have to go out and look for that, or you might need funding in some sense, which is really hard to come by. You might need that, or support can also be non-monetary in terms of needing to be advocated for at certain levels, or having the word spread, or having different people in different positions use the resources they have access to kind of help create different plans. So people who are working in different departments will have the ability to provide different kind of support. And so just to know what that's going to look like and how you're going to bring people together in that sense.
We also recommend that you create multiple opportunities for engagement. So at first, CARLA was meeting in person, but then obviously when COVID-19 started, we switched to Zoom. And that's actually been good as well. Having 90, like we said, 95 members, we can't all fit in the same place, even if we could find a time for us all to meet. But even when there's 20, 30 members present, it's a little more comfortable over Zoom. And then we can also more easily do breakout rooms to do our special interest groups. And that also offers a level of comfort for some people. Additionally, the framework that we wrote, a lot of people were writing on it, but there were more people in the group than who worked on it, which is fine, because a lot of those people who didn't participate in the actual writing process participated in the discussion. So making sure that that people processing out loud and talking and communicating, that is also valued. We also want to discuss our values explicitly so that everyone is on the same page about what our foci are, and we don't get off track on some other thing that's not the point of the group. We want to remember that the journey is ongoing. There have definitely been fits and stops with this. I think at one point we were hoping to have our framework adopted by many more offices and departments, but because of the strike, we kind of had to pivot. That doesn't mean that that goal won't be achieved. We're looking at the long arc of this, and we're not that we shouldn't be, there is an urgency to this work, but that we know it's ongoing and there's no end. We also want to be responsive and self-directed, and that goes back to how we are not being directed by the college or the administration or the president. It's really important that we as a group decide together what our projects are going to be and how we are going to achieve them.
So for some of the ideas for meetings, I kind of talked about this at the beginning, but not really having like a set agenda. CARLA has become a space for people who across different departments to share what's kind of happening. And we begin with like an open-ended question, or usually something's happened on campus that we need to talk about. And we're like, okay, well, does anybody know about this thing that's happening? And a lot of people will have different views on it, like as a student, having faculty and staff feedback or just knowledge of what is happening around campus, especially because as students, we don't really have access to that, has been really interesting and has been very helpful because I'm able to go back and like talk to people and talk to friends, and vice versa for like sharing what's happening. Like during the strike, there were a lot of things that were circulating just among students, and I was able to share that with faculty and staff in CARLA. And a lot of things that are important for CARLA is like building community and having a space for community, and that's really central to our mission and our values.
And so just what Ananya said, we do operate often around information sharing, because as faculty and staff, there are things that students are doing that we don't know about, and there are things that are happening on the staff level that faculty don't know about, or the faculty level that staff don't know about. And so it's this really amazing space of being able to share and open up the opportunity for transparency and visibility with a goal of with a single focus and a goal for moving forward. And then we didn't do group writing sessions very much before we transitioned to Zoom. We'd offer information in group meetings in person, and then a few people would go out and write, and it would usually be 3 or 4. But once we transitioned into Zoom, we were able to use Google Docs, and we would open up space for other people to add to documents. And so even if they weren't able to make a meeting, they still could have their voice heard, or their contributions valued in ways that that we hadn't quite thought about before. So definitely being responsive and not having such a single focus that you miss out on opportunities that will present themselves.
We also had a couple special interest groups that were largely investigatory and exploratory. So like Chanel was saying, there are things that are in existence that not everyone knows about. So there could be a special interest group where faculty, staff, and students are all talking about communication of different DEI initiatives happening across departments. And so in our own, like using all of our roles, we are trying to figure out how is this happening? What is already happening? How can we support this work? How can CARLA be a resource? So kind of creating projects for ourselves within special interest groups is something that we have done. And then also project development in small groups and large groups. We are not getting directions from the administration, which is a good thing. And that means we need to be constantly keeping up to date on what's going on and educating ourselves on the history so that we can work to not repeat it and create structures for the entire community to use to protect the most marginalized.
And I just want to add something about the special interest groups. That's also something that is new and came out of last year, because we were able to be on Zoom and have a lot more people attend meetings. We realized that there were different, we all had a common goal, but there are different ways of achieving that. And so the special interest groups came out of recognizing that some people wanted to work on like transparency, others wanted to work on communication. We have a power mapping project that has been in the works. And so there's opportunity for people to like get in where they fit in, but we still are moving forward together. So that has been really special. And I'm looking forward to continuing that this year. And so these are just a few other artifacts from one of the, I guess that's 2019, but one of the activities was for people to write down their personal commitments. And so these are some of the ones that that stood out to me as I have the whole pile here. But remembering and thinking about special interest groups as well, we remember that we all bring something personally and we all have our own spheres of influence that we can operate in. And that should be welcomed and that can be harnessed and wielded actually quite powerfully. So remembering personal commitments and allowing people to bring that into the space and supporting them to go back out is a goal. And so we have a good time doing that. And thank you so much for your time and for your attention. We are ready for questions.
All right, thank you so much, all of you. Really, really interesting, really fascinating stuff. I know there was a number of commentary in the chat, and so I'm wondering at this point whether folks have any specific questions for our Bryn Mawr colleagues. Again, feel free to put them in the chat. Use the raise hand feature, or if you're just bubbling over, just go ahead and unmute yourself and have at it. And I will scan the chat quickly too while we're waiting for folks to get unshy. Laura, go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you so much. My name is Laura Munich. I'm a Bryn Mawr alumna. I was a McBride Scholar, which for those of you who are unfamiliar is a program for women beyond traditional college age. And I'm a former K through 12 world language teacher. I left the classroom a few years ago, just before the pandemic due to illness, and I'm sort of figuring out how to reimagine my life. And as part of that, during the pandemic, became very involved with the Philadelphia Musicians Union. I'm a performing artist myself. And so have found myself now a year and change later as the founder and chair of their diversity committee, because I saw a void there, a need there. And am looking at how I can sort of not only be most effective in building community in that role, but also use this as an experience to reimagine my career. And I just want to thank you because tonight is our first social justice book club meeting, and we are sort of struggling to get engagement, and I don't know how exactly. Maybe my connection to Bryn Mawr. I found out about this meeting, but my notes here are answering many of the questions, and a wonderful primer for a retreat that we're hoping to have in November to help us crystallize our vision and chart a path forward. And I'll end by saying, I love how you are finding a middle way between specificity of mission and vision and openness for and fluidity. And that is also answering a question that I've been struggling with in a volunteer sort of context and getting engagement and reminding me that everything doesn't have to be carved out. It can be intentional without being rigid. And so I want to thank you for sharing your process and this information and for inspiring me to move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Laura, for your commentary. We do have a couple of questions popping up in the chat here. Let's see, get everybody. From Micah, have you planned to partner with surrounding HBCUs?
So we are in conversation with some faculty at Lincoln and Cheney, but at this point, we're just information sharing really. And there's, we don't know quite where it will go, but hopefully it will be an emergent partnership because one, they're both super close to Bryn Mawr and we have connections, specifically my department to education. We have connections in multiple ways. And so yeah, it's a goal.
There is another question from Tara in the chat. She says, DEI work, racial literacy, critical race theory. Where are the intersections and the tensions, and where might they be different types of work? I'm sorry, do different types of work? How do you see these themes reflected in CARLA's approach? And that's in the chat if you want to take a look at the question as well.
I can start with that, and then Joy and Diane definitely feel free to jump in. Ananya has to leave us. She has student duties. But thanks so much, Ananya, for being here. You want to say anything
Ananya.
before you leave?
Oh, no, just like, thank you. Thanks for everyone for coming. I had fun and I'm glad to share what CARLA's been doing. Yeah, have a great day.
See ya.
You too, Ananya, thank you.
So, DEI work, racial literacy, critical race theory. DEI work, it's interesting, it's necessary, but one of the things that always annoyed me about the word diversity and the ways that people treat diversity as if it is something that is new and like, oh, we're embracing diversity. I'm like, well, diversity has always been present. You just didn't accept it. You just didn't accept it or celebrate it, and or people were purposefully excluded. And so diversity to me is just a way of recognizing what always is and always has been and always will be. But that does not mean that people are included and or treated equitably. But we focus specifically on race and anti-racism because in conversations about DEI, it's normal for people to ignore race. Or they'll use the word diversity instead of using race, or they'll say, oh, we're diversifying our faculty, like, or even, I mean, one of the things that I don't particularly like about the ways that Bryn Mawr and other places report ethnic and racial demographics is that they lump all these people of color together, which is fine. Definitely don't mind to be in community, but the ways that I experience that is that they're trying to make the numbers look better than they actually are. And I don't mind critiquing anything and everyone. And so DEI work is a beginning place, but we can't stay there because it often doesn't get to be as critical as it needs to be once we jump over to critical race theory. And thinking about racial literacy in the middle of that, it's to me being comfortable, I shouldn't say comfortable, acknowledging race, acknowledging the skill set that it takes to recognize race and to make sure that it is a central part of conversations and consistent. And then when we're moving into critical race theory, I think I love critical race theory, but to me, it gives us a blueprint for how to move forward. So we're starting with recognizing that race is involved in all of the different ways that people can be oppressed or experience oppression. So it's intersectional in that way. And also it recognizes that whiteness is a factor, especially in academia, but in our world in general. And then it pushes us to consider counter narratives, to amplify voices that are often ignored. And then if we move beyond critical race theory to anti-racism, that pushes us to act and do something about it. Joy or Diane, what do y'all wanna?
I just want to add that the literacy part is so important because a lot of our students, and honestly our Bryn Mawr employees as well, they lack confidence to address and critique what the college is doing. I think when we critique the diversity reports that come out, that is so important because it's easy for people to say, well, they did something and this looks good to me, because they don't have the skills to understand that actually what the college has committed to is different from what was demanded originally by students, for example. And being able to examine the structures it doesn't matter if 21% of our students are not white, if those 21% are miserable due to the structures in place. It doesn't matter if they are included in classes and activities and everything, if they can't afford, to be here for their however long they're going to be here, and so on. So it's definitely all related, but the literacy part creates more leaders and creates more people who can hold the college and all of us together, hold each other accountable. So that's why I love that that is a core tenet of CARLA.
That was awesome. I don't think I can really add anything to that. I said in chat, I think one of the places I've landed after being in CARLA conversations is that truly the white people on campus have a lot more work to do, even to get like a basis of understanding to how much anti-racism work there is to do, even on a liberal small college campus that is really touts their community and their acceptance and their inclusion, and yet is missing the skill and the kind of community trust and the connection that is really needed to do the deep and hard work of having some of these conversations and breaking open some of these, invisible barriers.
Great, thank you. Dr. Stokes, and then Sylvia and Rita in the chat with related questions. But Nicole, you're up first.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciated the presentation, and I put in the comment that I really appreciated that you made an important distinction across three concepts that oftentimes in the execution of this work get conflated. So the idea of DEI work in terms of the practitioner, right, and how this work gets executed versus anti-racist or racial literacy, which is a point of view, right, of how this work could get executed. And then contrast that with the idea of critical race theory, which again, I'm going to talk from my lens as a sociologist, that has a very special history and theoretical orientation. And I think it is important to unpack this when we go into the execution of our work. And I think it's important to get buy-in on what your campus's positioning is going to be, right, on this work. And that's kind of the conversation that we're all having on, whether the work should strive for equity or whether the work should strive for justice, right? Equity is just moving barriers around so people get what they need to achieve whatever the goal is. But justice is questioning, interrogating, do we need the barriers in the first place, and knocking them down? And so I think having those very pointed conversations on your campus of what is this work? Is it going to be equity work or is it going to be justice work? Those are different. And have differing outcomes is important. And I also think when we have gatherings and conversations, starting with a framework of kind of who's doing the work and where are they in their respective DEI journeys is important. Because if people see it as just inclusion is important, then they're not going to meet you where equity or justice begins. Right? So I think we do have to do a better job of unpacking concepts, defining concepts, and making sure people have a shared understanding of what the work looks like in our spaces and places on campus. That was my soapbox. I'm done.
Thank you, Nicole. From the chat, we have a comment and a question from Sylvia. She's interested in knowing about opportunities, either paid or pro bono, to gain hands-on experience in university campus relationship with communities. Wondering if there's something like that at Bryn Mawr.
I'm thinking there are There are opportunities, but those opportunities are mostly for students. And staff and faculty are the ones who kind of facilitate those spaces, or they may have a partnership with an organization, and then they're able to create like a praxis course where students can have those experiential learning, but tied to some academic related discussion of that. And that is not something that is it's not widespread. You have select faculty who come with their partnerships already, and then students have the opportunity to participate in those. But Diane, do you have other thoughts?
I was trying to frame a concise answer, because I think that it really varies by department. Some departments fund ongoing learning to a certain extent. So you can say, for my professional development, I, as an individual, want to gear myself to learn about whites confronting racism as opposed to prospect research in the 21st century or whatever. And our department has been very supportive of that sort of individual position. And I think that happens in several places across campus. And recently, they have created the funding to support students and presumably staff as well, who have self-led projects. And I can't remember what those are called, but they were called a something. And that actually provides the funding for people to do that work. But I feel like what Chanel was saying is really relevant, which is it's still just a few faculty members with their connections, as opposed to all faculty realizing that they need more connections.
And what you're talking about, Diane, it was in the idea of it was introduced. I think the Racial Justice Fund is what they've called it, and people can apply for funding. The idea of it was presented before the strike, but it was loose. It was words, and no one knew what was happening or where it was going.
And it was unfunded.
It was unfunded. There was no money. There was just the idea. Right. Let's be clear. There was the idea that there would be a racial justice fund, but because the budget had already been set, there was no money in it. So as a result of the strike and students demanding that the administration make space for people to do that work and stop requiring people to engage consistently in unpaid labor around diversity, equity, inclusion, and anti-racism, then somehow the fund has been funded. And I think they opened it up for applications this fall.
Thank you. We actually have a follow-up question in the chat from Rita. Are there community partners involved in this effort? Does CARLA intersect with Bryn Mawr civic and community engagement initiatives?
So we have membership from career and civic engagement on campus. And because of that, we are like many places are siloed. So we're able to hear about the initiatives that exist in those spaces that are opportunities mostly for students to participate in. And then career and civic engagement on its own has started their own task force with members of CARLA, but not necessarily in alliance with CARLA, but they're not in opposition to us, but they started their own work. And because we have membership within CARLA who are in career and civic engagement, they bring those ideas over. And so oftentimes what happens is that members of CARLA are able to take their work back to their offices or departments, depending on the department and depending on the office. I won't say it happens all the time, but that is people's goal when they join, to try to bring that work to their spaces. And so we don't have anything that is formal with career and civic engagement, nor I saw another question, nor do we have a formal partnership with a community partner just yet.
Thank you.
Yeah, emphasizing the importance that CARLA really includes members from all across campus. Student voices, student knowledge of student leadership in spaces, student-led projects, groups, etc. It has staff people from across campus, including civic engagement, some people in leadership, some people in administration, some people coordinating projects. It has some faculty members from several different departments. I mean, it's really, yeah, even dining services. And that's hugely important because, like, I think many of us are siloed, and without that cross-pollination, it really would be a different effort.
Any other questions or comments? If not today, Chanel and company, how can folks get in touch if they have additional questions or would like to learn more about CARLA?
Sorry, I couldn't find the unmute. It went away. So I'm about to put my email here in the chat. And we also, I don't know if the link was dropped in earlier for our website. We were able to get a website from last year. We were able to do quite a few things last year. So we have a website now that has links to most of the information that I think Ananya shared earlier, but I will also put in, and Joy, feel free, co-convener. Okay, go ahead, girl. Joy's newly installed as of yesterday, but we'll announce it to the people in our first meeting in October. Thanks there. So there is our website. It's relatively scant because like we all have other jobs. And one other thing is that CARLA does not have a budget. And of course, it's volunteer. Luckily, we were able to get funding for Ananya's position because we should not take further advantage of students. But yeah, so this work is completely volunteer and it does require effort, but that effort brings a lot of joy and a lot of community with it. So yes, I encourage people to reach out. I just have a question for the people who are still here. If there is time, I'm wondering like who is looking forward to starting the work, or are there people who are already doing this type of work? Like what's happening out there? Because just the way we're siloed on our campus, like we don't know what other people are doing. So so I think that we would love to hear from you all and take in information and things that we can bring back to our own group to move forward.
It looks like maybe we have a lot of information gatherers, but we're not quite at the action step yet.
Okay, Laura.
Well, I already spoke. I wanted to make space for others, but seeing as no one is stepping forward, I'll share that I explained a little bit what we're doing. While it's not strictly an education setting, the American Federation of Musicians is one of the oldest labor organizations in the country, and the Philadelphia chapter was founded at the turn of the last century, but has a particularly fraught history in that, like in many major cities, there was a Black union and a white union, and the white union was made up mostly of classical players, and in its origins, they were immigrants from Europe. And in the wake of the Civil Rights Act, the AFM put out a mandate and had people travel the country to merge the segregated unions to be in compliance with the law. And that in Philadelphia, which is one of the hotbeds of jazz in the 20th century and has long been, had a very large African-American community. It was particularly challenging because the Black community in the 60s and 70s was sort of a stronghold of self-determinism, and we really did not take kindly to that mandate and fought and appealed, and the AFM revoked the charter of the Black union. So the Ideas Council, formerly the Diversity Committee, is in that sort of particularly challenging context where there's already a lot of hurt. There's the memory of the actions of the union, and we're trying to sort of build community and with a newly elected administration sort of forge a new path. And so we're finding that a year in, it's difficult to get the community trust that you spoke of so eloquently before. And I was struck by what Ananya talked about in terms of that individual conversation and inviting people in to participate. So that is a big part of our mandate. But figuring out how to sort of get over that initial hump is where we are right now. So thanks.
Thank you, Laura. Hillary, do you want to just say a few words before we thank everyone and close out today?
Yeah, I just also wanted to maybe explain or even remind for some people, and I can share screen real quick. Our college success, Janine talked about our K-16 partnerships network at the beginning, which is, you know, a sub-network of PHEND, really thinking about university school partnerships. But within that, we have basically broken off yet another network that we're calling College Success, and really trying to think about, you know, what does it take to help, as Tia McNair from AAC&U puts it, our campuses to become more student ready than sort of always bemoaning that students aren't quote unquote college ready. And so a few years ago, we did some focus groups and some work and came up with this framework that, you know, what we basically call our 5 buckets. Like, these are the things that we think make a difference for students and student success, particularly low income, first gen students, students of color. And so, you know, what we've been trying to do is put out these webinars sort of loosely related to these buckets. And so I think today, you know, and of course, nothing fits exactly in a bucket. You know, it's to me both about supportive culture and climate, but also, you know, relevant pedagogy and instruction. And so just know that, like, this is kind of how we've been organizing and thinking about the work. And we hope to have future webinars, you know, that sort of span these various topics. And we might be, I think, having one that maybe is also partly straddling the instruction and supportive culture climate. So Janine, I don't know if you want to talk about what might be coming down the pike. Still very
Sure.
much information, but
Right, in the beginning stages, but folks should stay tuned. We've been talking with the folks at the Autism Institute, and they have a particular focus this year on working with autistic individuals throughout the college access and success pipeline. And so we're looking to do some work with them and putting out a webinar and a couple of other things that would have that particular focus. So if that is an interest, or if you know folks who might be interested in that, again, just sort of stay tuned. We'll advertise it in the same way, newsletters put out to our networks and so forth. So that'll be coming in the next couple of months.
And speaking of that, there were about 20 people who registered for this call that were not already getting our newsletters. And so guess what? You're now part of the PHEND Club. You're going to get, I don't want to say a lot of email from it. It's like once a week newsletter, and then a once a month specific focus on college success. Certainly you can manage your own subscriptions at any time. So just stay tuned for that. And then I will note, Nicole, I know there's a big autism like initiative at St. Joe's. And so we might tap you for that as well, because I know, or your colleagues, because I'm pretty sure that you guys have done some coordinated and intentional stuff around that.
All right. So with that, thanks again to Chanel, Diane, Joy, and Ananya. Really appreciated what you brought to the table today, what you've been working on, and what you had to share. I'm sure you'll be getting some follow-up emails. And thank all of you for coming. We appreciate your time and your attention, and have a great rest of your day. All right, take care.
Much for being here. See you all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone. Thanks. Nice work.
Wonderful.
What did you think, Chanel? How'd you feel about that?
Yeah, it was fun. It was so fun to put it together too. So
Oh,
I'm really
good.
excited that we have this. Yeah.
Good.
Very good.
Eden neglected it. I think in your introduction, you did not mention that you're a Bryn Mawr parent.
I was keeping that secret. Well, I'm also a Bryn Mawr. I'm
Alum.
a Bryn Mawr alum too. I'm
Okay.
alum and parent. Yes.
Nice,
Thank you
nice.
for that. Yeah,
What
I had
year
lots
did
of
you
thoughts.
student?
I graduated 87. Oh, and my
Okay.
daughter is
Yeah.
2022. So
Okay. Oh, okay. So senior? What year is it?
she's
So
senior.
She's a senior already?
Yeah.
Oh,
Wow.
Lord.
Lots of sit-ins. Yeah. I don't
Nice,
think she's
nice.
joined CARLA yet, but
Oh, tell her about us.
I will.
What's her
I mean, she's
department?
aware because she, pardon me,
What's her department?
linguistics.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
God, Eloise is a senior. Holy moly.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
Time flies.
I cut you off though, Eden. What were you saying?
I did have a question, but I was like,